The stars looked peaceful from the bridge of the colony ship Hope's Dawn. 5,000 settlers slept in cryopods, dreaming of their new home. They had no idea that they had drifted into restricted space, no idea that death was coming. Captain Tom Hayes watched from the cloaked UES Retribution, humanity's most advanced warship. His orders were simple: escort the colonists safely, remain hidden, avoid any diplomatic incidents. First contact with the Galactic Council had happened just 3 years ago, and tensions remained high. "Sir, unknown vessels approaching the colony ship," said Officer Reed at the tactical station. 7 ships, unknown configuration. They're powering weapons. "Hail them," Hayes ordered. "Tell them it's a civilian vessel." No response. "Sir, they've locked on." Hayes gripped the arms of his command chair. "Drop cloak. Position between them and the Hope's Dawn. Shields up." "Sir, we can't reach them in time." Reed's voice cracked. The bridge crew watched in horror as bright beams sliced through the colony ship. The Hope's Dawn never had a chance. No shields, no weapons, no warning. Its hull split apart like paper, spilling the cryopods into the cold void. 5,000 lives snuffed out in seconds. "Get me a count on survivors," Hayes said, his voice deadly calm. "None detected, sir," whispered the sensor officer. The alien ships turned toward the now visible Retribution, but made no move to fire. "They're hailing us now, Captain," said Communications Officer Davis. A blue-skinned alien appeared on screen. "Human vessel, you have witnessed action against trespassers in restricted space. Return to your territory immediately. This incident is concluded." Hayes stood slowly. Those were civilians, colonists, families. Irrelevant. The boundary was clearly marked in the star charts provided to your government. "We received no warning. You fired on unarmed civilians." The alien's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "Warning is not required for violations of this magnitude. Remove your vessel or face similar consequences." The transmission cut off. The bridge fell silent. "Orders, sir?" asked First Officer Wilson. Hayes looked at the debris field that had been the Hope's Dawn. Among the wreckage, he could see the small bodies of children who had been dreaming of their new home just moments ago. "Scan their ships. I want to know everything about their weapons, shields, and weaknesses." "Sir?" Wilson asked. "We're outgunned 7-1. I'm aware of the odds." Hayes turned to his crew. "I made a promise to Earth that I would bring those colonists home safely. I failed. But I will not turn tail and run." He pressed a button on his chair. "All hands, battle stations." The Retribution hummed as weapons powered up. But Hayes knew a direct confrontation now would be suicide. "Plot a course away from here. Maximum speed," he ordered. "We're retreating?" asked Wilson. "No," Hayes said. "We're going hunting. Take us to the edge of the system, then activate the Phantom Drive." The experimental drive had never been tested in combat conditions. It would allow them to vanish completely, then reappear anywhere in Council space without warning. As the Retribution turned away, Hayes opened the ship-wide channel. "This is your captain speaking. Today we witnessed an atrocity. The Galactic Council has shown us who they truly are. They believe we will run home scared. They believe humans are weak." He paused, looking at the images of the dead still floating on his screen. "They are wrong." The Retribution accelerated away, then vanished in a flash of light. 3 days later, at the edge of Council space, a single human warship appeared. It broadcasted a simple message to every ship, station, and planet in range. "We are coming." Admiral Vex slammed his fist on the holographic table, making the display of the human warship flicker. The council chamber fell silent. 12 representatives from the most powerful species in the galaxy watched him with worried eyes. "One ship. You panic because of one ship." Vex's gray skin flushed purple with anger. "The Council commands 10,000 vessels. The humans have been in space for barely 2 centuries." Agent Mira stepped forward. her slim form dwarfed by the Admiral's bulk. "Sir, I believe this threat should be taken seriously." "You always defend the humans," Vex growled. "Ever since you began studying them." "Because I understand them," Mira replied. "No other species in the galaxy would respond this way, with a single warship rather than a fleet." The council leader raised a hand for silence. "Explain, Agent Mira." Mira touched the display, bringing up images of human history. Humans value symbols. Throughout their history, they've rallied behind single champions against overwhelming odds. David versus Goliath. The 300 Spartans. The Alamo. She looked around the room, meeting the confused stares of aliens who had no reference for these events. "More importantly," she continued, "humans are the only species we've encountered who will knowingly sacrifice themselves for revenge." "Illogical," muttered a council scientist. "But true," Mira insisted. "The ship approaching us, the Retribution, is not just a vessel. It's a message, and its captain doesn't expect to survive." The room erupted in arguments. Vex silenced them with a gesture. "Bring in the human prisoner," he ordered. Guards escorted in Jack Miller, a security officer captured from an exploration vessel months earlier. Despite his chains, he stood tall. "Human," Vex said. "A ship from your world approaches Council space. It calls itself Retribution. Explain this foolishness." Miller's eyes widened briefly before he controlled his expression. "Which colony did you attack?" The room fell silent. Miller laughed, a harsh sound. "You idiots, you actually did it. Let me guess. You fired without warning. On civilians." "The law was clear," Vex said stiffly. "They entered restricted space. And now you're afraid of one ship." Miller shook his head. "You should be." "Your people would sacrifice a valuable warship for mere revenge?" asked the council leader. "You don't understand humans at all," Miller said. "That ship isn't coming to die. It's coming to win." Alarms blared suddenly. A junior officer rushed into the chamber. "The human vessel has jumped. It's bypassed the outer defenses." Vex turned to his tactical display. "Impossible. No ship can jump with that precision." "The Retribution can," Miller said quietly. "It's not like other ships." "Explain," demanded the council leader. Miller smiled. "Earth's most advanced vessel. Experimental engines. Weapons you've never seen. But that's not what makes it dangerous." He looked around the room. "It's dangerous because of who's commanding it. Let me guess. Captain Hayes." Mira checked her datapad and nodded. "Tom Hayes lost his family in the first colony massacre when raiders hit a human settlement," Miller explained. "He doesn't make threats. He doesn't bluff. And he never, ever gives up." The council members shifted uncomfortably. "Mobilize the entire fleet," Vex ordered. "Set up defensive lines at these choke points." He marked positions on the star map. "That won't work," Miller said. "Hayes won't follow your rules of engagement." "Then what would you suggest?" the council leader asked, earning a glare from Vex. "Surrender," Miller said simply. "Find whoever gave the order to fire on that colony ship and offer them up. Otherwise—" He shrugged against his chains. "Otherwise what?" Vex demanded. "You don't understand what you've awakened," Miller replied. "Humans have a saying about poking bears. You just poked the biggest bear in the galaxy." As Miller was led away, the tactical display updated. The Retribution had destroyed an outpost without slowing down. Its course was clear, straight toward the council homeworlds. Mira leaned toward the council leader. "Sir, I recommend immediate evacuation of border worlds." "Over one ship?" Vex scoffed. The leader raised a hand. "Begin the evacuations. And may the stars help us all." The council science team huddled around displays showing scans of the human warship. Chief Scientist Rek pointed to the unusual energy readings with a trembling finger. "The power output makes no sense," he said. "Their reactor should melt down at these levels." Behind him, junior scientists muttered to each other. The Retribution had just passed another defensive checkpoint without slowing. 30 Council ships destroyed or disabled in under an hour. The shield technology is unlike anything in our records, continued Rek. It doesn't just block our weapons. It seems to absorb the energy. Can we adapt our weapons? Asked a military observer. Not quickly, Rek admitted. We would need weeks, maybe months. In the engineering section of the Retribution, Ben Foster wiped sweat from his forehead as he crawled out of a maintenance tunnel. Warning lights flashed on nearly every console. ELA, status report, he called to the ship's eye. Main reactor at 117% of rated capacity, the calm female voice replied. Shield harmonics destabilizing in sections 12 through 18. Weapon systems drawing more power than projected. Ben sighed. We're pushing her too hard. The captain's orders were clear. ELA responded. Maximum combat effectiveness regardless of wear on systems. Yeah, I know. Ben moved to the main engineering console. We're not supposed to come back from this mission anyway. The doors slid open and Captain Hayes entered. The dark circles under his eyes showed he hadn't slept since the attack on the colony ship. How long can we maintain this pace? Hayes asked without preamble. Honestly, maybe 3 more days before critical systems start failing, Ben replied. We weren't designed for extended combat operations without support. Hayes nodded. We'll reach the Council homeworld in 2 days at current speed. Make it last that long. Yes, sir. Ben hesitated. Sir, the crew is talking. They know this is essentially a suicide mission. And they're still with you, sir, all the way. Hayes placed a hand on the engineer's shoulder. Keep her running, Foster. Make Earth proud. On a Council refugee ship, children from an evacuated border world pressed against viewport windows. They watched their home grow smaller as they fled. Their parents whispered about the human warship that had appeared without warning in nearby space. Why must we leave? A small child asked its mother. Because a monster is coming, she replied. An old grandfather nearby shook his head. Not a monster, a judgment. Agent Mira studied the human captive through one-way glass. Jack Miller sat calmly in his cell, despite knowing his people's warship was on a rampage through Council space. I need to understand, she said when she entered. Why would your people send one ship instead of a fleet? Miller looked up. You think it's about efficiency, about winning with minimal losses. That's how the Council thinks. And humans think differently. For us, sometimes the message matters more than the outcome, Miller explained. One ship against an empire says something that 1,000 ships never could. What does it say? Mira asked. That we aren't afraid. That even alone, we will fight. Miller leaned forward. A human once said, the true soldier fights not because he hates what is in front of him, but because he loves what is behind him. Mira considered this. You believe Captain Hayes expects to succeed against our entire fleet. Miller smiled. Hayes doesn't care about surviving. He cares about making sure everyone remembers what happened, so it never happens again. On the Retribution's bridge, Officer Reed monitored incoming transmissions. Sir, we're picking up mass panic across Council worlds. Their civilian ships are jamming all escape routes. Hayes nodded. And their military response. They're gathering a battle group at Nexus Station. 30 ships, including 2 dreadnoughts. Hayes studied the star map. Set course for Nexus Station. Prepare all weapons. Sir, Reed hesitated. That's their most heavily defended outpost in this sector. I know. Hayes' expression remained calm. They expect us to avoid it, to pick easy targets. And we're going straight in. Exactly. In war, the most dangerous enemy is the one with nothing left to lose. Hayes straightened in his command chair. And we have already lost everything. The Retribution changed course, accelerating toward the massive space station where the Council fleet waited, unaware that they were no longer the hunters, but the hunted. Commander Lyra stood on the bridge of the Council dreadnought Invincible. 30 warships surrounded Nexus Station in perfect formation, the most powerful battle group assembled in 50 years. Her four hands moved confidently over the tactical displays as she addressed her officers. "The human ship will be here within the hour," she said. "They think their technology gives them an advantage. But no single vessel can stand against this fleet." A young officer approached with a datapad. "Commander, I've analyzed the human warship's previous engagements. They don't follow standard tactics. I've commanded fleets since before you were hatched." Lara cut him off. "All enemies fall to superior numbers. It is the way of the galaxy." The young officer retreated, but not before whispering to his colleague, "She doesn't understand what we're facing." Aboard the Retribution, Tactical Officer Anna Reed ran combat drills with her team. The holographic display showed the Council fleet arrayed around Nexus Station. "They've set up a classic defensive sphere," she explained, "designed to catch us in crossfire the moment we exit hyperspace." "How do we counter that?" asked a junior officer. Anna smiled grimly. "We don't counter it. We dive straight into it." She manipulated the display. Earth history is filled with battles where the numerically inferior force won by doing the unexpected. The Battle of Thermopylae, the Charge of the Light Brigade, Operation Overlord. She pointed to the center of the Council formation. "They expect us to emerge at the edge of their sensor range, to probe for weaknesses. Instead, we'll jump directly into the center of their formation." "That's suicide," someone muttered. "No, it's psychology," Anna replied. "Their ships will hesitate to fire for fear of hitting each other. We'll have seconds to target their command ships before they can reorganize." The Retribution dropped out of hyperspace with a flash of light, directly in the heart of the Council fleet. The enemy vessels, expecting the human ship at the perimeter, were caught completely off guard. "Weapons free," ordered Captain Hayes. "Target the dreadnoughts first." The Retribution's main cannons fired, tearing through the shields of the Invincible as if they were paper. The nearby Council ships hesitated, just as Anna had predicted, afraid of hitting their own vessels in the crossfire. Commander Lyra staggered as her ship shook from the impact. "Impossible. Our shields are the strongest in the galaxy." "They've adapted their weapons to our shield frequency," a technician shouted. "Lower decks reporting heavy casualties. All ships, fire at will." Lyra commanded. The Council fleet launched a barrage of missiles. The space around the Retribution filled with explosions, but its point defense systems fired with impossible precision, detonating the warheads before they could reach the hull. "They're targeting our engines," Anna reported on the Retribution, adjusting shield harmonics to compensate. The human warship spun in place, its weapons cutting through 3 more Council vessels. Systems throughout the Retribution flashed warnings as Ben Foster fought to keep the overtaxed engines from failing. "Reactor at critical levels," ELA reported. "Hull integrity compromised in sections 4 through 7. Reroute power from life support if necessary," Ben ordered. "Everything to weapons and shields." On the Invincible, Commander Lyra watched in horror as half her fleet burned. The human ship moved like nothing she had ever seen, slipping between larger Council vessels, using them as shields while picking off targets one by one. "We need to retreat," her second-in-command urged. "Never," Lyra hissed. "We outnumber them. We cannot lose to one ship." A searing beam cut through the Invincible's bridge. Lyra's last thought was that she had gravely underestimated humanity. When the battle ended 40 minutes later, only 3 Council ships had managed to escape. The Retribution hung in space amid the debris, its hull scarred and breached in dozens of places. "Status report," Hayes ordered, wiping blood from a cut on his forehead. 27 enemy vessels destroyed or disabled," Anna reported. 7 crew members dead, 16 wounded. Main engines at 41% capacity. Shields failing. Hayes looked at the tactical display showing their course to the Council homeworld. "Can we make it?" he asked softly. Anna met his eyes. "It'll be close, But we'll get there. As the damaged Retribution limped away from the battlefield, the surviving Council ships broadcast images of the battle throughout the galaxy. For the first time in centuries, true fear spread through the Council worlds. The Council emergency session was chaos. Representatives shouted over each other as reports came in of the Retribution's devastating victory at Nexus Station. The main display showed the damaged human warship continuing its advance toward the Council homeworld. "We must negotiate," urged Councillor Vell, her voice barely heard above the din. "This slaughter cannot continue." Admiral Vex, his uniform still perfect despite the catastrophe, sneered. "You suggest we surrender to a single ship?" "I suggest we survive," Vell replied. 3 battle groups destroyed. 7 worlds evacuated. All because we fired on civilians without warning. The Council leader silenced the room with a gesture. "Ambassador Trell will attempt contact. Prepare reparations offers. The humans must have a price." Diplomat Trell, known for negotiating peace with 5 previously hostile species, approached the Retribution in a small, unarmed shuttle. His green scales shimmered with nervous sweat as the human warship's targeting systems locked onto his vessel. "This is Diplomat Trell of the Galactic Council," he transmitted. "I come in peace to discuss terms." To his surprise, the Retribution allowed his shuttle to dock. Armed guards escorted him to a conference room where Captain Hayes waited. Trell noticed the human looked tired but resolute, his uniform torn and stained with what must be human blood. "Captain Hayes," Trell began, "the Council deeply regrets the unfortunate incident with your colony ship. We are prepared to offer substantial reparations." Hayes said nothing, simply staring at the alien. Trell continued nervously. 500 billion credits, exclusive mining rights in 3 star systems, and advanced technology access. A generous offer for an unfortunate misunderstanding. "Misunderstanding," Hayes finally spoke, his voice dangerously quiet. "Follow me." He led Trell through corridors filled with busy crew members. Many were injured, but still at their posts. They passed a memorial wall covered with photos. Men, women, and children from the destroyed colony ship. "These are who we're fighting for," Hayes explained. "Not for credits or mining rights." In the medical bay, Dr. Lisa Ward treated injured crew members. She looked up as Hayes entered with the diplomat. "Doctor, would you explain to our guest how humans process grief?" Hayes asked. "We don't bottle it up like many species," she said, applying a bandage to a wounded crew member. "We channel it. Throughout human history, grief has built monuments, changed laws, and yes, sometimes started wars." She met Trell's 4 eyes directly. But most importantly, grief demands meaningful change, not just compensation. Trell noted how the crew touched the photos on their uniforms as they worked. Images of loved ones lost on the colony ship. He had never seen such a display of collective mourning turn to purposeful action. "Your attack wasn't a mistake," Hayes said as they returned to the conference room. "It was a reflection of how the Council truly operates. Your peace is built on intimidation. Your order maintained through fear. What do you want?" Trell asked, finally understanding that this wasn't a typical negotiation. "Those responsible for the order to fire, delivered to Earth for justice," Hayes replied. "And Council reform. New first contact protocols. No more firing without warning. No more civilian casualties dismissed as unfortunate incidents." "The Council will never agree to such terms," Trell said. "Then the retribution continues to your homeworld." Hayes' voice was calm. "And we'll see if your leaders are still unwilling when we arrive." "You would destroy our capital over principle?" Trell asked incredulously. "We would demand justice," Hayes corrected. "Your Council doesn't understand humans yet. We can forgive enemies. We can rebuild relationships. But first, there must be accountability." As Trell returned to his shuttle, Communications Officer Mark Davis approached Hayes. "Sir, Earth Command is hailing us. They say we've made our point. They're ordering us to stand down and return home." Hayes looked at the star map showing their position. just one day from the Council homeworld. Send our response, he ordered. Mission parameters unchanged. We'll contact when objectives completed. They won't like that, sir. Probably not, Hayes agreed. But we didn't come all this way to leave the job half done. As Troll's shuttle departed, he realized with growing dread that he had just witnessed humanity's true strength. Not their advanced ship or weapons, but their absolute conviction. And he knew the Council was not prepared for what was coming. The 13 Council species had never agreed on anything in their 1,000-year history. Yet now, as the Retribution entered the home system, ancient enemies stood together. Their combined fleet formed a wall of ships between the human warship and the sacred homeworld. Final defensive line in position, reported an officer on the Council command ship. 200 vessels, including our 5 remaining dreadnoughts. Admiral Vex nodded grimly. And the gravity well generator. Charged and ready, sir. Vex allowed himself a small smile. The gravity well generator was the Council's most closely guarded secret weapon, designed to create a localized singularity that would crush any ship to dust. They had only used it once before, to end the Hive War 3 centuries ago. Let the humans come, he said. This ends today. On the Retribution, Chief Science Officer Paul Green studied the unusual energy readings ahead. Captain, they're powering up something massive, he reported. Energy signatures unlike anything we've seen before. Hayes nodded. Analysis. Based on the quantum fluctuations, I'd say it's some kind of gravity weapon, Paul replied. Likely designed to create a localized distortion in space-time. Can we counter it? Paul hesitated. There's a theory. If we invert our shield harmonics at the moment of activation, we might be able to reflect the energy back on itself. But it's never been tested. Well, we're about to test it, Hayes said. Make the preparations. The Retribution's engines were barely functioning. Whole sections of the ship were sealed off due to hull breaches. The crew, exhausted after days of continuous battle, manned their stations with grim determination. Communications Officer Davis intercepted transmissions from the Council fleet. Sir, they're arguing among themselves, he reported. 3 species want to surrender. 2 are threatening to withdraw their ships. Their unity is fracturing, Hayes observed. There's more, Davis continued. I'm picking up transmissions from Earth. Our government is dispatching a second fleet, but not to assist us. He looked up, troubled. They're worried we might go too far, sir. They're coming to ensure we don't destroy the Council homeworld. Hayes nodded slowly. Then we better finish our mission before they arrive. On Earth, the United Earth Government emergency session was tense. Admiral Carter addressed the assembled representatives. The Retribution has demonstrated our military capability. Now we need to demonstrate our mercy, she argued. Captain Hayes has lost perspective. His mission of justice has become a quest for vengeance. His crew follows him willingly, countered another representative. They witnessed the colony ship destruction firsthand. Precisely why they shouldn't be the ones determining our response, Carter replied. The second fleet launches within the hour, with orders to prevent any attack on the Council homeworld. In space, the Retribution approached the Council blockade. The massive gravity weapon began to glow with unnatural light. Now, shouted Admiral Vex. A beam of focused gravity shot toward the human warship. For a moment, the Retribution seemed to distort, its hull bending inward. Then Paul Green activated his experimental defense. The Retribution's shields flared with blinding light as they inverted their harmonics. The gravity beam struck and paused, caught in a feedback loop, before reversing course. The energy wave hit the Council fleet like a tsunami. Dozens of ships imploded instantly as the gravity weapon's power tore through their own formation. The command ship was wrenched apart. Admiral Vex screaming silently as his body was crushed by the forces he had unleashed. On the Retribution, systems failed across the ship. Emergency power kept life support functioning, but little else. Status, Hayes demanded, pulling himself up from the floor. Weapons offline. Engines at 12%. Shields gone, reported Anna Reed. But we're alive. And the Council fleet? Scattered. Their weapon destroyed at least 60 of their own ships. The rest are retreating or disabled. Hayes looked at the view screen showing the path now clear to the Council homeworld. Its blue-green surface loomed ahead, defenseless. "Sir," Davis said quietly, "what are your orders?" The entire bridge crew turned to their captain. They had followed him across the galaxy on this mission of retribution. They had defied their own government. And now, the final decision. Hayes stared at the planet below. 5 billion lives. An entire civilization that had existed for thousands of years. "Take us into orbit," he ordered. "And prepare a shuttle. I'm going down there myself. The whole council is there." "Sir," Reed warned, "it could be a trap." Hayes looked around at his crew. Bloodied, exhausted, but unbroken. Sometimes the most powerful statement isn't destruction. It's showing mercy when you have every reason not to. The council chamber fell silent as Captain Hayes walked in. Security Chief Maria Jones flanked his left side, her hand never far from her weapon. Her brother had been a teacher on the colony ship. His photo was pinned to her uniform. 4 armed crew members followed, looking dangerous despite their exhaustion. The Grand Hall, with its soaring crystal dome and ancient stone seats, had never seen humans before. Representatives from all 13 council species watched with a mixture of fear and fascination. Captain Thomas Hayes of Earth announced the council leader, his voice betraying his nervousness. "You have brought war to our doorstep. You have destroyed our fleets. And now you stand before us." Hayes looked around the chamber, taking in the alien faces. Some showed fear, others defiance, a few perhaps understanding. "I stand before you because I chose not to destroy your world," Hayes replied, his voice carrying throughout the hall. "I could have bombarded this planet from orbit. Instead, I come with terms." "You are in no position to dictate terms," growled a reptilian counselor. "Your ship is crippled. Our planetary defenses could destroy it with a single command." "Perhaps," Hayes conceded. "But before those defenses activate, my crew would ensure that the coordinates of your homeworld reach Earth. And the next time, it wouldn't be one ship coming." He paused. "It would be our entire fleet." Agent Mira stepped forward from among the council officials. "Captain Hayes speaks the truth. Humanity would not stop. They would see it through to the end, whatever the cost." "What are your terms?" asked the council leader quietly. Hayes nodded to Communications Officer Davis, who activated a holographic display showing the destroyed colony ship. "First, those who gave the order to fire without warning will face justice on Earth," Hayes began. "Second, the Council will establish new first contact protocols that prohibit firing on unknown vessels without attempting communication. Third, the Council will create a memorial fund for the families of the 5,000 colonists who died." Murmurs filled the chamber. The terms were unexpectedly lenient. "And fourth," Hayes continued, "humanity will take a seat on this council, not as supplicants, but as equals." "Impossible," shouted several councilors at once. "We cannot be dictated to by barbarians." "You misunderstand," Hayes said calmly. "This isn't a negotiation. These are the conditions for peace." From the back of the council seats, a hardline military commander rose, a weapon in his hand. "No, we do not surrender to animals." The shot came without warning. Maria Jones saw it a split second before anyone else. She moved without hesitation, throwing herself in front of Hayes. The blast hit her squarely in the chest. As she fell, Hayes caught her, lowering her gently to the floor. "Captain," she whispered, blood bubbling from her lips, "tell my parents. I found justice for him." Her eyes closed. The entire chamber watched in stunned silence as Hayes carefully removed the photo of her brother from her uniform. He stood slowly, holding it up for all to see. "This is who we are," Hayes said, his voice thick with emotion. We fight for those we've lost, but we're also willing to die to protect the future." He looked around the chamber. Maria Jones just gave her life not just for me, but for peace. She believed that justice and vengeance aren't the same thing. The council guards had seized the shooter. The council leader stepped down from his platform, approaching Hayes and looking down at Maria's body. "I do not understand your kind," he admitted. "You come seeking retribution, yet offer mercy. You have the power to destroy, yet choose restraint. That's what makes us human," Hayes replied simply. 1 year later, the reformed Galactic Council convened with its newest member present. Ambassador Miller, formerly prisoner Jack Miller, took his seat as Earth's first representative. In the center of the chamber stood a memorial, a twisted piece of metal from the Hope's Dawn colony ship, alongside Security Chief Maria Jones' service badge. The council leader opened the session with a new ritual, a moment of silence for those lost in the conflict. Then he spoke the words that had become the foundation of the new council charter. "We remember so that we may learn. We acknowledge our failures so that we may grow. And we recognize that strength lies not just in power, but in the wisdom to know when not to use it." On Earth, the crew of the Retribution received both honors and reprimands. Captain Hayes retired from service, declining promotion to admiral. He chose instead to teach at the academy, where he lectured on the ethics of command. The Retribution itself, too damaged to repair, became a museum and memorial. School children from across Earth, and eventually from council worlds, toured its scared corridors. They would stop at the wall of 5,000 photographs, learning how a single ship had changed the course of galactic history, not through destruction, but through humanity's complex capacity for both retribution and forgiveness.